with me bell-bottom trousers and me brass buckled belt and me braces embroidered all around, with me moleskin waistcoat and me fancy belt. It's an outfit that suits me to the ground. Me mate's in the cabin, she's brewing up the tea, with a long white apron way below her knee. She's got her best bonnet on because it's her birthday as we go moving up the cards. She's got her best bonnet on because...
On Tuesday the 23rd of March we took United to San Francisco, then Continental to Heathrow. As you can see, it was a co-share with Virgin Atlantic. We arrived the next morning, took the Underground to Victoria and then a train to Bromley South. Len met us at the station and we had a relaxing day at 16 Norheads Lane. Olive cooked us a nice dinner. Pat did some grocery shopping on Thursday the 25th while I played around on Chris's computer. Chris is Len's son. Olive very kindly let us use her car while we were over there, and on Friday the 26th we drove up to Ursula's home base at Fenny-Compton. We discovered that we'd left the eggs and bacon in Olive's refrigerator, so after we got settled in we drove back to Banbury to pick up the missing supplies. Around 5 p.m. we pulled out of the marina under drizzly skies and headed south down the Oxford to Clayton. On Saturday morning we cruised down to Banbury where we picked up a few more groceries and some flowers for Ursula. While we were in Banbury, the nice weather suddenly changed to rain and hail and even snowed a bit. Anyway, by the time we'd reached Grant's Bridge it was back to blue skies. We had a nice afternoon cruise through the pleasant countryside of the Cherwell Valley and ended up mooring for the night just before Dashwood Lock. We were away before 8 a.m. on Sunday under bright skies. I was doing the locks on my own, and while bow hauling out of Dashwood Lock, the chimney had a little altercation with the bridge. We cruised to Kirtlinton Quarry where we had brunch, and I got out the hammer, brasso and paint. The chimney looked far better than when we started. After a while we were cruising down the Cherwell River and it was very calm as I waited to get into the Shipton Weir Lock. However, the wind started to gust. I was in mid-river and Pat suggested I pull over to the towpath bank. I hollered back to her, "No need, I can hold her okay." Before you could say, "Oh poop," I was in the offside bushes having a close look for kingfishers. Anyway, the weather deteriorated as we approached Thrupp, so around 4 o'clock we watered up and moored alongside the Canal cottages. In the evening we went to the boat for a well-deserved pint and a nice dinner. After a nice cooked breakfast on Monday we got underway and headed for Duke's Cut and the River Thames. This was new waters for us. As we made our way through Oxford, a couple shouted, "Pat and John Brennan!" It was Maggie and Bob Howell on narrowboat Harlequin. We bought our share in narrowboat Ursula from them in 1997, and prior to that we considered going into partnership with them and 3 other couples in the building of Harlequin. We pulled over to say hello and had a very pleasant visit with them. After a wee droppy of scotch, we bid our farewell and continued on our way. We reached Sandford Lock during the lockkeeper's lunch break, so we decided to wait for his return and had a nice lunch at the King's Arms. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon as we cruised through Abingdon. Mooring on the river is not as convenient as on the canals, so around 4:30 we started looking for a spot. We found the perfect place just north of Days Lock. It was on the non-towpath side of the river in a rural setting. We reversed in between a few fallen tree limbs and into our own little natural harbour. That's where we tied off for the night. It's now Tuesday the 30th. The lock keepers don't start their day until about 9:30, so we weren't in any hurry to get underway. It was another beautiful day and the scenery along the Thames was very pleasant. We passed some beautiful riverside homes as we cruised through the towns of Wallingford and Pangbourne. Here is Pat giving the swans a bite to eat as we waited to enter Maple Durham Lock. All of the locks on the Thames are well maintained and manned by friendly lock keepers. At least the ones we met were very friendly. If the lock keeper's not around, you can operate them manually, just as Pat is doing here at Maple Durham. As you can see from the sign, we've cruised 33 miles since leaving Oxford. We then went another 5 miles along the Thames to Reading. We arrived around 3:30 and tied up by the Tesco moorings to do a bit of shopping before turning onto the Kennet Avon Canal. Our 2 days on the river were very enjoyable and far exceeded our expectations. Great weather, easy cruising and virtually no traffic. Pat decided she liked river cruising better than canals. We left the Tesco mooring around 4:30 and made a sharp turn onto the K&A where a large gasometer greeted us. We cruised the section of the map that's marked in blue. After going through Blake's Lock, we came across an unexpected traffic light. It's one-way river traffic through Reading. Because the river was flowing very fast, we had lots of difficulties pushing the button on the pole that would give us the green light. Having survived the fast-flowing narrow channel and bends through town, our next obstacle was County Lock. The landing stage was very rickety and the water pouring over the nearby ominous weir didn't help matters. After a mile or so of dingy backyards, we reached Southcote Lock. The water was gushing out of a nearby pump house, but it was getting dark, so it was time to call it a day. By now, Pat wanted to turn around and forget about the Kennet Avon. Everything seemed so different on Wednesday morning. The sun was shining and things looked much brighter. However, there were still plenty of challenges ahead. The eastern part of the K&A is the Kennet navigation. Part of the time you're in the cuts and part of the time you're on the river. The locks on the K&A were a little different also. This is Garston Lock, one of the 2 turf-sided locks on the canal. Even when you're locking up, these have to be emptied upon leaving so that the vegetation doesn't drown. Garston has not been altered very much since it was built, and it's the more authentic of the 2 turf-sided locks. We soon found out about the K&A swing bridges. Every one of them seemed to have a different mechanism. Theo, which we went by a little while ago, was totally electronic with road barriers dropping automatically. Others, like this one at Upton, has to be hand cranked. Pat got our exercise this morning. This one required 40 turns before the bridge could be manually swung open and 40 turns to return it in place. Another one required 90 turns. At Woolhampton there's a swing bridge, a weir on the right, the Kennet entering from the left, and then the lock. The sign advises boaters to keep to the left because of the weir. I complied and gave Ursula a bit of stick to get across the current. Unfortunately, the Kennet had decided to build a nice little sandbar out into the cut. I ended up with the bow in 6 inches of water. After much huffing and puffing and reversing, I got free and made it safely in and out of old Woolhampton Lock. We decided to moor up just beyond the lock, so I hopped ashore with rope in hand. Unfortunately, I had left the engine ticking over in reverse. With a little help from the current, Ursula gradually pulled away from the bank, taking the rope with her. I started hollering at Pat, but she couldn't hear me because she was busily looking for the mooring pins in the engine room. Finally, a surprised Pat popped her head up to find Ursula merrily reversing backwards towards the lock. She soon got everything under control, and we moored up for the day around 3 o'clock. We walked around the village, but it was early closing, so nothing was open except the Falmouth Arms, where we had a pint. In the evening we ate at the Row Barge Inn. Pat had rack of lamb and I had duck breast. Excellent dinner in nice surroundings. Thursday the 1st of April was another gorgeous sunny day. After breakfast we set off for a leisurely morning cruise to Newbury. This part of the canal passes by water meadows and lakes that were originally gravel pits. We also had a few more swing bridges and went through another turf-sided lock at Monkey Marsh. We arrived in Newbury around 1 o'clock. We had to moor close to the A34 bridge because all the other moorings were occupied. After getting settled, we walked around town and did a bit of shopping in the market square. Then we had a pint at the Lock, Stock and Barrel. We returned to the boat and waited for the arrival of Olive, Len and their daughter Karen. They were originally planning on joining us on Tuesday, but they got delayed until today. They called around 4 o'clock to say they'd arrived in Newbury and needed directions to the boat. I told them that we were moored by Newbury Bridge. I then realised that there are 2 Newbury bridges. I rushed down to the old bridge with 2 rum and cokes in hand. Sure enough, there was Lem waiting for me. After getting their gear stowed away, the 5 of us went to the Lock, Stock and Barrel for dinner. Karen drove home afterwards. It was a bright and sunny Good Friday as we passed under Old Newbury Bridge and this interesting sign. Shortly after we took off, Pat hopped onto the towpath and popped into Tesco's while we went through Newbury Lock and West Mills Swing Bridge. She decided to take a quick cut back to the boat and ended up walking a couple of miles through fields before meeting up with us. We cruised up to Kintbury and had a lunchtime pint at the Dundas Arms, and then went for a walk around the quiet village with its alleyway antique shops. Pat and Olive looked around the shops some more, while Len and I had another pint at the Blue Ball. Today was the Devizes to Westminster canoe race with 100 or so participants. I thought it was going to be chaotic on the canal, but it turned out to be a bit of fun. We decided to stay moored across from the Dundas Arms and cheered on the canoeists on their way. Pat and I walked into the village in the evening to call Ray to wish her happy birthday. We had a short morning cruise on Saturday and arrived in Hungerford at 10:30. A sunny morning quickly turned into a rainy day as we walked around town looking at the antique shops. I bought the Titanic brass bell in one of them for £22. In the evening we called Yvonne to wish her happy birthday and then strolled up Station Road to the Down Cape pub where we had a nice meal. Well worth the walk. Around 7:30 a.m. on Easter Sunday, we quietly untied and eased our way out of the mooring. I imagine the boat alongside us had quite a surprise when they found out that we'd left and they were tied up to the bank. Hungerford was our turnaround point, so we started our return journey. It was a bright sunny morning and a perfect day for shorts. With a wee droppy in my fancy glass in one hand and the rope in the other, I volunteered to do the lock. Walking backwards, I vanished over the lockside embankment into a pretty bed of nettles. With itchy legs and not a drop spilt, I bravely carried out my assignment to the accompaniment of laughter from my sympathetic crew. On Easter Monday, Pat's brother Ron, his grandson Billy and friend Rose drove up to join us for the day. We cruised for an hour or so and moored up just above old Woolhampton Lock to wait for them. We met them at the row barge inn around noon and had lunch there before returning to the boat. It was a bit tricky coming out of the lock and getting through the swing bridge that Pat had ready for me. No grounding out on the sandbank this time, but you could have water skied behind the boat as I made the turn through the open bridge. It was only an hour or so cruise down to Aldermaston, where we checked out the visitors' centre. After a bite to eat on board, Ron, Billy and Rose caught the 4:30 train back to Woolhampton. It turned into a glorious evening as we cruised to Solhampstead and our overnight mooring alongside the nature reserve at Woolwich Green Lake. It's now Tuesday the 6th. Pat and I went for a morning walk by the pretty lake and Lem walked into Theo to get some cigarettes. We took off before Lem returned and met up with him at Theo's swing bridge. We had an interesting time navigating into Country Lock with its wobbly landing stage and the fast flowing current. We set the traffic lights to green and sped through Reading along the one-way system with its sharp bends and curves. By 3 o'clock we'd left the K&A and moored up on the Thames by Tesco's. We did some shopping while waiting for Karen to arrive and drive Olive and Len home. They left us around 7 o'clock. We settled down to an evening on our own. Well, it's now Thursday the 8th, and after breakfast we started heading back up the Thames. This shot is approaching Clavisham Bridge. It's about a mile beyond Reading. Just beyond the bridge we had to negotiate through a gathering of swans. By 1 o'clock we travelled the 11 miles to Goring and had a pint and nice lunch at the Swan. In the afternoon we had a few showers, but I had no problem finding my way to Wallingford because I had my trusty River Thames book by Chris Cove Smith. And Pat kept a lookout for oncoming traffic for me. By 3 o'clock we'd reached Wallingford and found a nice mooring on the east bank just before the bridge. Wallingford was our rendezvous point for meeting up with our friends Pete and Barbara. After giving Ursula a bit of spit and polish, we walked into town to check out the parking possibilities for Peter's car. Then we had a walk around the shops and a pint at one of the pubs. We had dinner on board tonight. It's Thursday the 8th, and Ursula sure does look mysterious in the early morning mist. This shot and the next one were taken from the bridge. After breakfast we had another stroll around town, and around 10 o'clock Peter and Barbara had no problem finding us. After we got all their gear stowed on board, I showed Peter the parking possibilities and moved the car into town while Pat and Barbara started checking out the antique shops. Pete and I joined them for a while and then took off for the Coach and Horses. That's a nice little pub by the village green. After 2 pints later, the girls caught up with us and the 4 of us had lunch there. We left Wallingford around 2 o'clock and headed up the Thames. This was the first time that Peter and Barbara had been on a narrowboat. It didn't take Peter long to get the hang of steering. Under sunny afternoon skies we cruised the 9 miles up to Clifton and then went up the Weir Stream to the Plough's mooring at Long Witterham. After a drink at the Plough we walked around the neat little village and then popped into the Machine Man for a pint. We returned to the Plough for dinner. However, Barbara's steak was not very good, so we most likely should have stayed at the Machine Man. On Friday the 9th we had a cereal breakfast and then headed back down the Weir Stream to the Thames. However, we somehow missed a left turn to Clifton and started heading south, but we soon got back on course. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon as we cruised through Oxford and Port Meadow. We wanted Peter and Barbara to have a taste of narrowboating on the canals, so we pushed on. Around 3 o'clock we said farewell to the Thames and returned to the Oxford Canal via Duke's Cut. All the moorings alongside the cottages at Throt were taken, so we tied off at the water point and headed down to the boat. I recognised the warden in the pub and mentioned where we'd moored. He said it'd be okay, but he'd move us along a bit into the private moorings. We had a good dinner at the pub and then went back to the boat. As promised, the warden had moved Ursula for us. A helpful and very friendly gentleman. After breakfast on Saturday, Peter and Barbara got a taxi back to Wallingford. Around 10:30, our internet acquaintances, Graham and Lynn Cope, and their dog Jasper arrived. After lunch at the boat, they joined us for a cruise to Kirtlington Quarry. On the way, we met Andy and Jan Greener on Narrowboat Whisper. They're another couple of internet acquaintances. From Sunday through Thursday we only took one photo of our cruise back to Fenny Compton. You'll just have to read the daily diary to find out what we got up to during this week. However, I've included this doctored up 2005 photo of Bridge 142 as a reminder of the problems we got into when I tried to replicate our mooring in 1993 while cruising on Claire Justin. Well, it's Friday the 16th of April. After our usual morning tea and biscuits, we were up around 7 o'clock. We cleaned the inside of the boat, gave the outside a quick wipe over and finished packing. We got to Fenny Compton around 9:30 and arranged for Ursula's servicing. We then paid the bill, had a quick breakfast on board before leaving for our next adventure.